Welcome back to this episode of the Real Rescue Podcast, powered by Vertical Helicast. This part two episode is being brought to us by Blue Drop. Their mission is to prepare your team for real world operations. Check them out today at bluedropusa.com. Anodyne Electronics Manufacturing, leading by design. Check them out today at aem-corp.com. And Axness, their mission, wireless intercom. Check them out today at axness.com. Now it's time to kick the tires and light the fires. Let's go with part two with my man, Phillip Powell. My name is Jason Quinn. I am United States Coast Guard Rescue Swimmer number 500. These are my rescues and rescues from those of us that put our lives on the line every day so others may live. This is the Real Rescue Podcast.
Well, that's kind of like what led me to the next place I went out of Houston was back to ATC Mobile. I got a phone call from a buddy of mine, Eric Sabulski. Said they were looking for people for the MH65 stand team, and I was like, you know what? I'll come over there. Before that, the stand team had gotten a little bit of a bad rap for some of the things that were happening in the fleet stuff. And I'm looking if I come over there, we're not going to be stump to chump, worried about the nitpicky things. We're going to focus on safety. That's me. I focus on safety, the EPs, and what can kill you in the aircraft. Everything else we can work on when we get back on deck. I said I'm not coming over there to you know to nitpick people and stuff. If you want me to come over there, he goes, no, that's kind of what we want. We're changing the what we're doing over here and how we do it, and we're looking for guys like you. So I said, yeah, I'll do it, man. I went back to Mobile, and by far the MH65 stand team was probably one of the best jobs I had in the Coast Guard. I loved it. Uh,
Nice. Very nice.
yeah,
So the
yeah,
stand
it
team,
was,
for those that don't know, is the standardization team. And the standardization team is what they go around to all the units throughout the Coast Guard to make sure everybody's doing it in accordance with the manual. Now, the fun part about it is I always remember, on an annual basis, stand team's coming to whatever unit you're at. Stand team's coming up. Make sure your gear's cleaned up, ready to go. Roger that, huh? It was like,
yep,
coming in for inspection. You're like, oh shit, is that legal? Oh no, take it off. No.
yeah, yeah. And I had the same thing. I hated the stand team when I was a flight mech. Got super nervous when they were coming around. Like, holy cow! Like they're gonna fail me. They're gonna take my wings and all this other stuff. So so when I went into the stand team, I I was like, I gotta remember how it felt when I was on the other side, sitting there getting my ground check and stuff. And so that was one of the things I tried to remember as a stand team member, is just trying to make people as at ease as possible, and cut the nerves down, um, to where they could successfully pass their check rides. Um, but I was with a great group of people. We had a really good shop. Joe McGuire, Charlie Sharp, uh, Scotty Lloyd. We Travis Cutler. We had a bunch of people in that shop. They were just really awesome guys and gals. We had Jessie Fowle in the shop as well. She's I think she's a chief out on the West Coast now. But just had an amazing shop, um, and had a blast just traveling around the country and seeing different units. And I was also a AHRS instructor, which is Advanced Helicopter Rescue School, out in Astoria, Oregon.
Excellent.
So I was an instructor there as well, and loved it. That was an amazing job. If you want to be humbled as a flight mechanic and a swimmer, go out there and hoist in that. That
Get your ass
environment.
kicked.
Yes, yes, yeah.
That's great.
I w- I'd been out there before. I went through the school when I was in Mobile in the 65 shop. They had sent me out there with one of the first Charlie models that we ever got. We took the 6510 out there. Rick Bolton was my instructor. Um, and I just fell in love with it. I was like, man, and I thought I was a good flight mechanic. I was like, man, I am awesome. And I got out there. That thing, it humbled me really quick. I was like, I suck. So so I yeah.
Oh my gosh. That's pretty
Um
awesome, dude.
yeah. So if you ever get a chance as a flight mechanic, if anybody listening, go out to AHARS. Ask your chiefs, get sent out there because it is an amazing school. Um and we worked out there and had a blast. Uh I think as I was getting trained as an instructor, I had a hoist runaway on the cliff. And so
Oh,
we had a
snap.
guy, yeah, on the cliff, a hoist runaway. Thankfully, Ryan Hickey, he was my instructor behind me, that was getting me qualified to become an instructor. The hoist just started going, and this guy was just going down the cliff. And thankfully, Ryan was able to stop it. We were able to regain hoist control, but I think he went probably, I think we estimated he probably went down about 25 to 50 feet down the cliff, and thankfully he
Holy
stayed
smoke.
engaged. Yeah, yeah, it was
Wow.
scary. I was like, yeah, it was nuts. Um,
Oh, that's
so we
fast.
had that.
That's a fast runaway. Just throwing that out there.
Yes, yes, that
Dang.
it goes like that, and I'll give Ryan all the credit because he was above me. I was actually laying on my chest trying to use the thumb wheel because the way we were facing, um, I couldn't really see the swimmer too well standing up, so I was using the pendant that we have in the helicopter, and Ryan was standing above me at the hoist control panel, so he was able to stop it and regain hoist using manual control. Uh, to keep the guy from going down the cliff any further. So yeah,
All
it
right,
was
all right.
scary though.
I
I was
want to
like,
get into some detail with this, if you don't mind, and you can like recollect some. We're gonna go fine details, and the reason I'm asking
okay,
this, so I have had two hoist runaways in my career, and
hmm,
both of them were because of the pendant itself. And when I tell you like my runaway, it was like this. It was like hoist power comes on, and the hoist just starts trickling out just a little bit of time. And I remember looking at it the first time. I'm like, it's not supposed to do that. And then you hit the
right,
pendant and you put it back up. It goes, it stows. You let it go. It starts coming out again. You're like, man, it's not supposed to do that. So
right,
secure it and secure hoist power, and we're just done. It did that again to me a little bit faster, but it wasn't like it was not booming out. Right. So now you're telling me that you've got like a full on runaway hoist. That shit is rolling out. So let me back up a little bit and say, can you explain the inside of the 865 and what you're looking at? Because you have two sets of controls to work the hoist, correct?
we do, yeah. So inside the cabin of the 65, you have the pilot to your left. When you're standing in the door hoisting, you have the pilot to your left side, and you have the hoist control panel to your right, up over your right shoulder, and then you have a pennant that comes out to allow you to, you know, lay on your belly and move around and use the pendant if you need to. We used it a lot to get the device into the cabin. Um, we could go into the back of the cabin using the pendant and uh, and go from there. But the hoist control panel has all your emergency features on it. Your manual override. You have emergency control of the hoist, which is electrical, on there as well. So if you have a power failure in the hoist, you can switch over to the emergency side, and that will engage a different system so that the hoist can be used on that side. And then you have just a step valve, which basically opens it up manually. Um, and you just open that valve up, and now you just have a manual toggle switch that is just up and down, and it slows the speed down as well when you go to that manual control. So
Okay.
my failure, we had just we were basically I had two blocked him because we were up at a high altitude. And when I say two block, that's all the way down. I'm just letting this guy go. And so I'm starting to
Full
slow him
speed.
down as he's reaching the
Flooring.
cliff, full speed,
Yep.
as fast as this thing will go. I'm starting to slow him down as he's starting to approach the cliff. But the problem was is when I let off the wheel, it didn't slow down. It kept going. So he contacted the cliff, and then just continue to go down the cliff at the same speed. And so right away, I noticed it. I looked down, my thumb's off the wheel. Ryan noticed it, and I think I said I have a hoist runaway, and that's about all I got out of my mouth before Ryan hit the power to the hoist, and then that's when it stopped it. Um, and thankfully, like I said, the instructor was above me, and Ryan could reach that panel because I would have had to like basically do a push up, jump up, and hit the power button. That's the only problem with the pendant is that you have no emergency procedures on the pendant. They're all up on the hoist box.
And now
So
the
he
pilots
was
up
able to.
front cannot shut off the hoist power, correct?
They can. There is a switch where they can turn it because they have to give you power to that circuit. So yeah, there is a switch that they can turn it off.
Okay.
Up on the overhead for them though. It's up in the overhead of the dash there. So the non flying pilot would have had to reach up and across the cockpit to turn that switch off for the hoist. But when he does that, then you have nothing back there. Uh, so we don't have shear. I think at the time we don't have shear if they turn it off on us. So they didn't want to do that in case we did have to shear him or something like that. So Ryan did exactly what he was supposed to do. Hit the power off. That stopped everything. And then we were able to regain through the manual control.
Yeah.
But this is just it's just hydraulic power. So you're opening and
Oh,
closing a
okay.
valve to get the hoist to come up. You're just you know you push up to come up and you push down to go down. It's very slow. It's like 50 feet per minute or something like that. So it's very slow getting him back up. We got him back up in the helicopter. He wasn't injured, thankfully. We knocked it off. We're going back. We dropped him off at the helipad. Went back to the base there in Astoria and proceeded to troubleshoot the hoist. And I think they couldn't really narrow it down to what it was, but we wound up just changing everything out. They checked the wheel
Oh,
to see if the
nice.
wheel and yeah. So we had an extra hoist there. We had an extra pendant, and I think we had an extra control box. So all three components got switched out that night, and we were able to go out and do some more hoisting the next day. But
Right on,
yeah,
man.
it's
Wow.
crazy up there.
Dude,
Yeah,
you're one of the first guys that I know of that's had like a legit runaway hoist. I know I've heard it, but most of them are like the ones that I have. Like it's a creep out. It's nothing of like 2 blocks going out. Dang,
yeah,
that's awesome.
it's
I love
scary.
hearing EPs like that.
It was very
I really
scary. It
do.
was yeah, it was one of the scariest EPs I've ever had. 'Cause you got a live person on the hook, and going back out to that
Yeah.
cliff the next day, trying to get back in the saddle and hopefully this thing doesn't fail on you again. You just really have to trust the aircraft and the components, and thankfully we had no other issues the rest of the time that we were there with the hoist. So, um,
Dang,
but
that's
you're right, the
awesome, man.
EPs work. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Kind of a bonus having somebody over the top of you, and I get that too. Like having just this extra set of eyes in there that can reach up and again, I can see it now because you're engrossed in everything that's going on. You're calling out the con. You're moving the guy, the swimmer out, and then all of a sudden that happens. So you have to do a reaction where your safety guy he doesn't have to react to anything with the component side of it or con anything. He just got to be like, oh, I know what the next step is, and goes in and shuts that down. Like, well
yeah,
done. Like
yeah,
to you and him. It's freaking awesome. Wow, dude.
yeah. It's yeah, and that kind of hoist, like I was always one of the guys that had my hand on the cable, so I could feel what the cable was doing. I didn't clench down on it, I didn't do the whole service loop
Yeah,
thing, but I
yeah.
let it run through
I
my
hate that.
cable. Yeah,
Not a recommended procedure. I'm just gonna throw that out there.
no, you can you will lose a couple of fingers doing that and hurt
Yeah,
some swimmers in the process. But
yeah, yeah.
we really focused on that in our time in the stand team as well. Um, but yeah, I didn't have my hand on the
Good
cable at
old
the time.
dog leg. Ugh, not a fan of it. Just me personally, bro. Not a fan of the dog
No,
leg.
no.
So we might be able to get into a soapbox about that one here shortly.
Oh man, we can go on about that because there are people that love it.
Yeah,
And
I
I've
can
seen
tell you
people.
why I can hit. Yeah, whoop. You know what? We're going to get into it. We'll get into that later. We're going to divert real quick to thank our sponsors.
Blue Drop Training and Simulation. Blue Drop Training and Simulation for equipping your team with essential training solutions, including highly interactive courseware and advanced VR MR simulation training tools. Explore more of Blue Drop's training solutions at bluedropts.com.
So, while I was on the stand team talking about EPs and stuff, one of the EPs that always bothered me was the ICS failure.
Okay.
And so in the 65, the ICS failure was if you were committed, you started to go through your checks, right? Check your connection, check your if you're in hot mic, if you weren't that, go into alternate, and then start talking again. Well, that didn't make a lot of sense to me, and we had a lot of problems with people, especially on stand checks and on training events. They would pull the basket off the vessel because the pilot, they would stop talking to the pilot. Nobody could hear anything. And the pilot would either start to drift, so they kind of stop conning. They stopped telling the pilot where to go. So I wanted to change that EP. I'm like, look, this EP is not, it doesn't work for what we do. It's not the safest thing in the world. So I pitched it to the stand team at the time that we change it to, if you are committed, you go straight to vocals. You don't mess with anything in the plane. You go straight to vocals and you get the device, clear the vessel, and you get yourself clear of everything. Now we can work the EP. And as far as I know, we implemented it and it stayed that way. As far as I know, they still do it. So that was one of the big changes that I can hang my hat on when I was at the stand team. I'm like, I'm going to change this EP. And so that was one of the ones that I changed and felt it was the safest thing for the Coast Guard to do.
Well done. I'm totally on board with that. And so one of the nice things about having the 65 specifically, like you said, your pilot is like literally right now. You're almost shoulder to back, if that makes sense. Like their chair is, you're almost rubbing up against them. So if you have a lost comm, the first thing you can do is just lift your boom mic up and then turn and just start yelling, hold position, or hey, we're going to abort. I'm bringing in the basket. We're clear of obstacles. You're clear back or clear forward, whatever direction you need to go. When you're in the 60, a bigger aircraft, like I'm flying on the 139 right now, you have to like reach up and hit the side of the aircraft, and you have to hit it or hit the floor of the aircraft really loud to get that acknowledgement of like, oh, there's what? Okay, that's a lost comm. He doesn't have something. You're just trying to scream as loud as you can up front. But same thing for me. It's I want to get the device, the person, whatever it is, out of harm's way, and then back into a clear area, whether it's forward flight, back to like a rest area. And I don't know what you guys call it, the Coast Guard. I was never a flight mech at the Coast Guard, so I don't know. But clear area, and then fix it and be like, my bad, I came unplugged, or oh, my bad, we got water in our mic, whatever. So
which is one of the reasons during that time. That's when I really started to work on a little side project that I have, and I started making these ICS boots, and I'm hoping that in the future I can get these things out to every hoist operator that there is. But they're basically these boots that I have one here that just go over the ICS connections and prevent that water intrusion and that failure of the system. And so I'm hoping to get these out here pretty soon. I got a little side business, secure comms, ICS boots, so trying to get that up and running. But trying to get these out to where we can hopefully save a lot of headache and hopefully save some lives because that's a big factor in hoisting is you lose communication like that in a critical phase of flight, and it can really get some people hurt. So
and water intrusion will be the first thing to cut out your mic. It is terrible.
Oh
it's coming down the helmet, down the boom, into the mic. or
Yep.
just down the ICS cord into your, and you're like, oh man, come on.
Yeah. I got a story about. I'll tell you about Harvey here in a little bit. And that's where we saw it uh really bad during Harvey. Was the water
Okay.
intrusion.
Do
So.
you want to get into Harvey now?
Sure. Yeah. I went from so from ATC stand team. I got the opportunity to come back to Houston. I made chief on the stand team. Um,
Nice.
yeah, they kind of told me, "Hey, you made chief, but we're gonna leave you here." One of those things, you know. And
Yep.
then March, they were like, after they told me they were gonna leave me in Mobile, they came up in March and was like, "How do you feel about Corpus Christi?" And I'm like, What? You told me I was staying here." And so I go down to my Master Chief and Marvin Rogers, amazing Master Chief at the time. And thankfully, he had saved the email from the detailer and everything. And he's like, "Look, this guy gets priority. He's on the stand team. You told him he was good. What can we do for him? His number one pick is Houston. He wants to go back there." And so thankfully, they worked something out. And I was able to get back to Houston as a chief. Um,
Nice.
and so
Very nice.
I got there, loved the unit. Like I said, I was happy to be back. And then, of course, we get there, and here comes Hurricane Harvey. And
Right.
we all thought, right, it was like, I've been through Katrina, you know, and I've been through some hurricanes before that. And we didn't really think a lot of it. It's supposed to hit south of us from at Corpus. So we just kind of prepared. We were actually like a staging point. So we had some helicopters here from other units to be able to respond. And we all went home that night. We had some crews on standby, but we all went home. And I think there was a big UFC fight that night that a bunch of people were watching. And the rain just started, and it never stopped. It was nonstop flooding and just crazy. I had never seen it before in my life. Um, I got the call that they were picking up people in school parking lots, trying to get crews back to the unit because we had been caught with our proverbial pants down. We'd had we had too many people away from the unit basically, and we had to get, with the amount of flooding we had, we had to get everybody back so that we could man the helicopters we had. Um, so they called me and
That
they
is
were like, "Hey, can you?"
awesome.
Yeah, right. So they
I mean,
called
it's
me,
not awesome, but it's pretty
right?
awesome. Hey, dude. Hey, I'm gonna come pick you up in the helicopter. Just go right outside of the cul-de-sac there.
Yeah,
What?
yeah,
Okay.
right. And it was
That's
like
kind of
that.
badass, dude.
We had a school that was here near my neighborhood, and they called me and they were like, "Hey, Chief, do we need to pick you up? We're going around picking people up right now." And at the time, I had a truck, a big Nissan Titan, and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna try and make it in my truck. And so I get out to 45, and I'm going northbound on 45, and I look over, and the southbound lane, they had these concrete barriers that divide the interstate. The southbound lane
Yep.
is completely underwater. I'm like, oh, this is not gonna be fun. And then the northbound lane is flooding as we speak, and so I decide, I'm gonna drive through this thing. And I did that probably. I shouldn't have done it. If I look back, I probably shouldn't have drove through it as much as I did. But I made it through, got to the unit, and it was just chaos and getting everybody organized and set up. We had fuel trucks going. We had our fuel truck going. I mean, we had a hot gas crew that was amazing, um, fueling all kind of aircraft. So my job as a chief when I got there was, we had a chief in maintenance control, Eric Lester. Uh, that guy's a maintenance genius. He's just one of the smartest guys I know. He's running the maintenance control side of it. I'm running the hangar deck, so I'm running the logistics that are coming in, all the supplies, any air crew that comes in. I'm checking them in. I'm getting them set up. So swimmers, flight mechs, pilots didn't matter. Pilots I'd send over to ops. Swimmers, swimmer shop, flight mechs would come to me. And one of the lessons I learned during Katrina was the flight mech list. And so we had this big board out on the hangar deck, and I put everybody that checked in's name on that board. And you got put on a fly list, and you did not fly unless you checked in with me on that hangar deck, and I assigned the crews. So it wasn't like you came there with the pilots, you came there and you flew with them. You got
Yeah, yeah.
assigned as the flights went out, and that way we could keep track of who's flying, the flight time, um, and it was people got to go in order, and it wasn't just mass chaos. So we started that, and it was very successful. But one of the first flights that went out was I believe it was a New Orleans crew. Getting back to the ICS thing, but
Yep.
they went out and were picking up a lady, an elderly lady, and the flight mechanic got water intrusion in her mic. And
Oh, I know this
when you're
story.
in hot
I know
mic,
this story because
yeah,
it was. Hold on, the swimmer. I can see his face. Graham McGinnis.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay, keep going.
I'd
Keep
love to
going
hear
for
what,
those that don't know.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I had an opportunity to interview Graham McGinnis, and he talks us through what happened from his eyes on the ground and
oh
watch the
wow,
entire thing happen. So everybody, you just go back, find Graham McGinnis, his episode, and you can hear exactly what he's talking about. But go ahead, give everybody a rundown, seeing that you were there and you heard it at the unit. So this is pretty badass.
yeah. So at the unit, the helicopter comes back, and we're debriefing the crew, the flight mechanic. I'm talking to her to find out. We'll make sure for one she's okay and she doesn't need any medical attention because the gist of it is they were hoisting, and in Harvey, unlike Katrina, it just kept raining. I mean, these crews were flying in less than a mile visibility. Again, we were doing things that we had never done before. They were flying with iPads on their legs and using Google Maps to find these locations that this that were being relayed to them from the rescue centers. Um, we weren't doing out in the ocean. We were flying between power poles and street lights and landing in cul-de-sacs, hoisting off roofs again. So again, just completely different than Katrina. And because it was raining so much, the water saturation for the aircrafts and for the crews was just crazy. And she was hoisting. The water got into her ICS connection. And when you're on hot mic, that's a connected feed. You just talk. And once that water hit it, it just sent out this loud squeal through the cockpit and through the communication system. Pilot couldn't hear her. Uh, the person was in the basket, I think probably about 20 to 30 feet up when the failure happened.
Yeah, something
And
like that. Yeah.
yeah, it was something like that. And then they just the pilot started to drift. The flight mech's trying to relay where to go, and they hit the wire. And when it hit that wire, it sheared the cable. She fell into the water. Thankfully, the water was deep enough and it didn't injure her. Um,
Yeah.
but and thankfully for the flight mech, she had actually started to go back into the cat. She had let go of the hoist cable. Thankfully for her, she's like, Chief, I just let go of the hoist cable and went to go check my connection or something when we hit the wire. Um, and so
Damn.
it's
Probably saved her
yeah,
life.
so right. So probably saved her life. Um, they brought the helicopter back, and so we grounded it for the lightning, basically like a lightning strike. Um,
Yeah.
and then so after that and the water intrusion, I just started making by hand like a ton of these things to pass out to the flight mechanics. And there's guys that are still in that still have some of these and are still using them. They're like, Chief, I still got that thing you gave me during Harvey. Um, but just to keep the ICS failure right. Yeah, it's great to hear the stories that they still got it and it lasts that long. But yeah, so the water intrusion not only on the flight mechs but on the aircraft as well. So we had to adapt not only with the ICS boots but on the aircraft. We came up with what's now known as the Harvey Chrome package. And so we just started putting
Ooh,
this
the
100.
Harvey
Oh yeah,
Chrome package.
all
Oh
Harvey
yeah, that's a
Chrome
good name.
package. So we had to take because we were getting so much water into the aircraft because it was raining so much. Um, and I don't know who came out with it. They were just like put 100-mile-an-hour tape on it. So, and 100-mile-an-hour tape is this aluminum tape that you can put on aircraft to uh, like a temp fix kind of thing, but to seal it. And so we had that around the windscreens. we had it around the avionics panel on the 65. So when the 65 was sitting out on the ramp with this thing, you saw all this chrome around the trim of the windows and on the side and stuff. So that's where we came up with the Harvey chrome package. But
That's so
yeah,
funny. Oh,
yeah,
that's great. I love how stories like that, that's where the name comes from. It's fantastic.
right. Yeah. And it's still I've seen it. I've seen it in videos from other hurricanes. Like that's one of the first things they do. They tape up everything. So they're still doing it.
Oh, that's cool.
But that first day we went through because we were just continuous ops. We were cycling through we had 60s there, we had 65s, and we had more helicopters coming in.
We're going to divert real quick to thank our sponsors.
Anodyne Electronics Manufacturing, a leading manufacturer of trusted special mission avionics for law enforcement, aerial firefighting, and utility operators. Visit www.aem-corp.com and learn how AEM's digital communication and loudspeaker systems, avionics consoles, radios, and specialty audio products can support your most demanding missions.
And so we started to run out of fuel in our fuel truck.
Oh my God.
So part of the right, yeah, we only had one truck, and so we had to go find an alternate source of fuel. So there was an FBO down the field from us at Ellington Field, and I took two guys with me and drove down there. And thankfully, they had a guy sitting there, like their 24-hour guy. He got stuck there, and I walk in, and he's like, I said, "Hey, I need your trucks. I need both your trucks that he had sitting there." I said, "I need you to go out there and train my guys on how to run them." And he goes, "Well, I got to call my boss. I just can't let you take my trucks." And I'm like, "Look, man, we're running out of fuel down there. We need fuel. I'm stealing your truck. You can call whoever you want afterwards, but we need the fuel and we need the trucks." And I pointed.
That's freaking awesome.
Yeah. So I pointed to my name on my shirt. And I'm like, "You can tell him Chief Powell came and took your trucks, and he can come down to the air station later, and we can discuss it. But we need those trucks, and I need you to go out there and show my guys how to use them." So we were able to get those two. So he's like, "Yeah, yeah, whatever." So we were able to get those two trucks, and the
You
funny
just
thing about it,
commandeered two
yeah, we confiscated them.
fuel
We were
trucks.
like, yeah,
Oh my God.
because
I'm not sure that's legal. Even though you're a U.S. Coast Guardsman, I don't think that was legal.
at the time it was like
Oh, it's
it
so
seemed like
funny.
the right
I
thing to
love
do.
that. It
But
probably was the right thing to do. It's just funny.
yeah, yeah. Well, we couldn't. Our fuel farm was flooded, so we couldn't get to the fuel farm.
Oh,
Um,
that's awesome.
and so we used those two trucks for our static refueling, and then used our truck for just refueling. But yeah, the guy. What was funny about it is that his boss that he was trying to call was actually one of the guys we picked up that day. Like we bring
No,
him
no
into
way. Oh,
yeah,
yes. Dude,
yes,
sick.
because he came back after everything had settled down. He came back and was like, um, came down to the unit to talk about something, and we got to talking about the fuel trucks, and he got a good laugh out of it too. And he's like, I was one of the first people that you guys brought back. Y'all brought me back here to Ellington, and because we didn't know where to take them. The shelters were flooded. Um, so at the very first couple of rescues we did, Air Station Houston was actually like a triage center. We were bringing people back, and our training room turned into a triage center. The swimmers that weren't flying, they were actually doing triage on people that were injured and stuff in our training rooms, in our lounge, until we could get the buses in to take them to actual shelters. We actually were like just a search and rescue hub. Um, so yeah, it was crazy. Harvey was something that was very different for us, um, but it was a great experience. My crew, they were amazing. Like I said, they flew in some very difficult weather. The maintenance guys and gals, man, they turned and burned to keep those planes going, and we did a really good job.
That's fantastic. I'll tell you what, I want to shout out like two things here. And the first one is because you were on the stand team, and I know we talked a little bit about Katrina, and now we're talking about Hurricane Harvey. And one of the things that you had mentioned there was having the list of guys, and you're going to be assigned to an aircraft or a flight. You're not going with your specific crews, and that's to back up to the stand team. The U.S. Coast Guard does that right, and I remember John Hall saying it actually in the movie The Guardian. He's like, it doesn't matter where your pilots are from. It doesn't matter where your swimmers are from. It doesn't matter where your flight mech is from. Everybody is automatically speaking the same language because of stand team. The standardization across the Coast Guard, everybody steps on the aircraft and knows exactly what the other person is going to say and how they're going to do their job. It's incredible. So mad props for you to be one of those instructors to make sure that happened. And knowing that you came from stand team to then Houston, and you actually got to see it work specifically there, like as the chief in charge of it all. So freaking awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
So the other thing
it was amazing to watch.
This number 2. Yeah, right? Number 2 out of this, I want to throw a shout out to you specifically because from that, you earned yourself a meritorious service medal. And I just want to read a couple things out of it because, again, this highlights what you had to deal with. But this is citation to accompany the award of the Meritorious Service Medal to Phillip W. Powell. Chief Powell is cited for meritorious service from 23 August to 12 September 2017 as the hangar deck supervisor at Coast Guard Air Station Houston, Texas, during Hurricane Harvey. Now, later on, and again, I'm not going to read the whole thing. So his aggressive leadership and comprehension knowledge of the aircraft maintenance and rotary wing flight operations were paramount in the successful completion of 682 sorties, 2,539 maintenance labor hours, and 388 refueling evolutions, including like stealing 2 other fuel trucks. Awesome. Oh gosh. Sorry, I had to throw that in there. As a hangar deck coordinator, he was assigned and tracked 389 air crews from 19 air stations. And then further down, allowing 91% of dispatch reliability. The very end of it ultimately saved and assisted the lives of 1,738 people in and around the greater Houston area. Phil, dude, that's awesome, man. Mad props. Well done.
It's a great award. I accept it on behalf of the people of Houston and the people that flew in for that case that were there during Harvey. Everybody, it was a team effort. I had some great people working with me. We had a great chiefs mess at Houston that was responsible for the leadership there. It really set the tone to get things going and to get things done. There were people that stayed at the unit overnight, sleeping on floors. It didn't matter. We had people from New Orleans. There were people from everywhere, just there, busting their tails, doing what they had to do, soaking wet. Our hot refuel team stayed out there for hours, just soaking wet, refueling aircraft. So it was probably one of the highlights of my career of seeing how well the Coast Guard can do its mission, and how well Coast Guard aviation as a whole can come together, do whatever they need to do, get the job done, and do it safely. We had no mishaps other than the cable strike. That was the only mishap we had during the whole event. And if you think about the visibility we had, the conditions these crews were flying in, to do all that with not hurting anybody was just an amazing task. And my people performed flawlessly. They were amazing. That was some of the best people I've ever served with, and had the pleasure working with and being their chief. Just immensely proud of everything they did that day. It was so much fun to watch.
Dude, that's awesome. I love it. Well, according to that, you led it pretty well, sir. Good job.
Yeah.
I like it.
Thank you.
We're going to divert real quick to thank our sponsors.
Axnis. The Axnis PNG wireless ICS system delivers cutting-edge wireless ICS technology to any aircraft. As a fully integrated system or as a carry-on, carry-off mobile base station, the PNG wireless system is the right solution for any mission.
So I'm gonna divert. I'm gonna sidetrack, and I want to talk about. We mentioned it earlier, a dog leg. So I want to talk about this only for a little bit because I think it's important. And
Hmm.
you, as a stand team instructor and somebody that was teaching this, and me, I'm doing it as well. I just want to have a conversation why you think it's important, and then I'm going to throw a little bit of my 2 cents in there as well. And maybe we're going to agree on something, maybe we're not. We're going to see it. I'm excited to see it. But for those that
Yeah.
don't know, on dog leg, what we're talking about is there's slack in the cable. So the hoist cable comes out of the drum, and you have the hoist cable in your hand, so the cable actually goes down below the hand and then comes in the hand and then down and out, and it gives you this little like slack area known as the dog leg. Is that the same thing you're talking about, Bill?
That is, we called it a service loop, is what we called it.
Okay.
And yeah, it was being used probably a little too much. So we started to go away from it, especially when I was on the stand team. Teach not to do it, uh, just for the hazard that it caused, the shock load, especially in a high seas environment. When you're
Yep.
working out in some rough water, we were seeing a lot of problems. And the new hoist that the Coast Guard got for the 65 had the slip clutch in it. But if you created that service loop, it really didn't, that shock load would still break the cable and not allow the slip clutch in the hoist to do what it was supposed to do, which is, you know, inside of a certain angle, the hoist would pay out if a load was put on it really quickly. It would just kind of freewheel a little bit, um, to prevent some the snapback. I think it came from one of the accidents that the Coast Guard had. I want to say it was the '05 out in Hawaii.
Actually, it's specifically out of Hawaii. Yeah. So that
Right.
the whole crew got, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway,
So
so here, yeah, keep
um
going.
so yeah, the service loop, we would see guys use it, especially when they're trying to deploy a piece of equipment and stuff, or even the swimmers, but we see it uh in that heavy surf area. And the flight mech, you start out with that loose grip, but what people didn't realize they were doing is as they got nervous, they would just tighten their hand around the cable, and then unintentionally they would create that service loop. And with, a swimmer, maybe two swimmers on the hook down below, you had about 600 pounds sitting down there on the hoist. And then if it dropped out on you and you had that service loop, we would see that sharp snap, and it could also wrap around somebody's fingers. We've seen guys get their hands smacked against the aircraft. Thankfully, nobody ever lost a hand or a finger. But we started to say, hey, stop doing this. Realize what you're doing. And some of the hoist gloves that they moved to later on, it made it a little bit harder for you to close your hand on the hoist. So it actually helped prevent some of that. You couldn't get that full grip on the hoist cable like some of the guys were doing before. So the newer equipment that came out kind of helped prevent that service loop a little bit. I was fine with them using it if they were delivering a piece of equipment like a sling. You would see guys kind of hold the sling up and then try and drop it um, to the swimmer in the water,
Yep.
and I was okay with that. But once they had the basket or the swimmer on the hook and stuff, uh, it was pretty much don't don't close up on the cable, don't create that service loop, because it was just too much of a hazard to the aircraft and the swimmers below and the aircrew member.
Agreed. Yeah. Now, here's what's funny about that is that, in the classes I've taught, I've seen a lot of guys use it, and I'm not a component of it. I don't like it because it's a false sense of security. Now, here's the argument
Mhm.
that people say to me: it's like, well, this way I can let out cable faster. Like if I have a little loop, hey, thumbs up. I can let out a little cable a little faster just by opening my hand, and then it drops out. I'm like, yeah, okay. Use the hoist. That's what it's there for. That's why you have a thumb wheel that you can utilize the hoist. The next one is they were like, well, if I have a little loop, I can actually lift the cable up and then get the hook to him that way if it has to go over something. Again, my argument, use the hoist, use the pendant. The other false sense of security, which people don't really think about, is the guys on the ground. So for me, as the rescue swimmer, I'm going to grab the hoist hook. I'm about to connect to myself, and I don't know that there's slack up top. So if I'm on
Right.
the edge of a rail, if I'm on the edge of a cliff, if I'm on the edge of anything, and I'm going to step off because I know that I'm going in that direction, or maybe it's got to be fast, and I step off, and now there's 2 feet of slack. Not only am I falling 2 feet and shock loading the cable, now I have an opportunity to be hurt. So don't do it. It's not.
Right.
It's not a good practice to use. So
No.
I'm backing you up, Phil. Okay. Yes.
Thanks. Yeah.
This
It's a
this is
horrible
Team
procedure.
Phil and Team Quinn right now. All right, all
There
day
you
long.
go. All day.
We might be the only two that are on this team, but that's okay. That's okay.
You'd be surprised. I think there's quite a few people out there that saw the especially on the swimmer side. Those guys put themselves down on that hook and they trust you to keep them safe and to do the best job you can to get them back up in the helicopter and in one piece, and so as a flight mechanic, when I had a swimmer on the hook, that was or even a live person on the hook, that changed the game completely. It was like, their livelihood and their health and well-being is in your hands now, and so you owe it to them to do the best job possible to prevent anything from happening to them. So
Yeah. You were talking about like using gloves now that have like you can't really get a full grip on the cable. Uh, so there are a couple handful of gloves that I do like. The ARS glove is pretty nice, and then there's another glove that Priority One Air Rescue has. It's all leather. I can't remember the name of the company
hmm
that actually makes it, but super nice. Like I said, I like it. I like both of them. They work well. But I actually heard this not too long ago from some of the guys in the UK, and they actually say like your hand should be just like a Lego guy hand, where you're like you are the Lego man, where you can't they have no grip, so they're just like yeah. So you're just like
right.
all around the cable, so you're not actually gripping anything. Your hand is going forward, and then you rotate back, and you're pulling the cable like to and from, where you never actually close your hand on the cable. So, what's your thought of that, Phil?
Yeah, I completely agree. And the glove that I switched to later on in my career, and the one that I wish I had had my whole career, was the actual one that Priority One sells with the big leather palm, and that kind of made you have that Lego grip. Like unless you really worked it, you could get your hand closed on it, but it kind of made you have that loose grip on it to where the cable's just running through it. You can still feel the speed of the cable, and you can manipulate it if you needed to put some pressure on it, but you couldn't really close in on it like you could some of the earlier gloves that we had that were just kind of like weightlifting gloves and the sailing gloves and stuff that we worked with before. Um, but yeah, I completely agree. Lego grip all the way.
Yeah, cool, man, cool. Phil, this has been an amazing conversation. I'm so excited. Thank you for touching on that one, the dog leg, and a little bit of that. I like giving people a little bit of training as well, just advice that we
Yeah.
can pass on. And speaking of advice, I'm going to ask you, the flight mech, and you, amazing leadership all the way through, retired to chief. Congratulations on that as well. What advice would you pass on to all the flight mechs that are out there now that are coming up, either just doing the job or been doing it for a little while, and they what's coming for them? What advice would you pass for them?
I think the biggest thing is just keep learning. Learn as much as you can. Uh, Learn different techniques. Look at different places. Stay within the manuals that they give you. Um, but the manuals are the standard, and they're still. I think they were talking about someone coming out with some technique manuals and stuff like that. But always keep learning and adapt to whatever you have in front of you. When you go out on these cases, it's not going to be a strict scenario. You're going to have to uh, adapt. You know, look at your Google Maps for where you're going on rescues. Steal a fuel truck if you need to, um, but just keep
That's
adapting.
so funny, dude.
um, and look at things. Keep looking at ways to make yourself better. Don't get in a rut. Um, don't think that you know everything. I think one of the things that made me uh, as successful as I was in the flight mech realm was my ability to stay humble and learn from everybody that I came in contact with. I didn't think my techniques and the way I did it was the best in the world, and I was always willing to look at somebody else's opinion or look at a way we're doing things and see if there was a way that we could make it better and a way to make it safer for people. So that would be my advice, is just to see, to keep learning, stay adaptive, and find ways to improve what you've been taught and make it safer for those coming up behind you.
Dude, I love it. Phil, this has been an incredible honor to have you on and hear these stories. Love it. Absolutely love it, man. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Very, very much.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me. This has been a blast. I love this. So yeah, yeah, it's been an honor to come on here and talk shop. It's great.
Yeah, man. I love talking shop. You know what? The next time we're going to do it, we're going to do it with a beer in hand. When I come down to Houston, because man, there's a whole bunch you guys got to come see down there. Like there's
That's
a
right.
list.
That's
You
it.
probably have Kurt Revels right down the road, and I have to come see that
You
guy.
know it.
Because I wanted to call him all sorts of good names, but I can't because he's one of my best friends, and I love the guy.
Yeah, sounds good. I'll have beer ready.
Man. Sweet.
All right, thank you.
Anytime, man. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are out of here. Go. Now, it's time for me to pull chocks and take off. But before I go, I'm always looking for the memorable rescues that people have done. If you have one that you're willing to share or know somebody who has a story, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to highlight it here at The Real Rescue. For everybody that is standing by for that SAR alarm, remember, those in distress are praying for a miracle. They are going to get you. So until next time, fly safe and swim hard. Thank you for joining me today here at the Real Rescue Podcast, powered by Vertical Helicast. We'd also like to say thank you to our sponsors for this episode.
Blue Drop Training and Simulation. Blue Drop Training and Simulation for equipping your team with essential training solutions, including highly interactive courseware and advanced VR/MR simulation training tools. Explore more of Blue Drop's training solutions at bluedropts.com. Anodyne Electronics Manufacturing, a leading manufacturer of trusted special mission avionics for law enforcement, aerial firefighting, and utility operators. Visit www.aem-corp.com and learn how AEM's digital communication and loudspeaker systems, avionics consoles, radios, and specialty audio products can support your most demanding missions.
And
Axnis. The Axnis PNG wireless ICS system delivers cutting-edge wireless ICS technology to any aircraft as a fully integrated system or as a carry-on, carry-off mobile base station. The PNG wireless system is the right solution for any mission.
go. Swim training. Yeah. Good boy. That's it. There we go. Lap one. Woohoo! Get up there. Ooh. I don't think he likes it. He doesn't like the swim training. You know what we keep doing? Keep putting him in for more. Ready? Let's go for the next round.